Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Please let me know if you can't hear me, but I'm excited for this one. Hope you enjoyed the intro and you're enjoying the space. Super interactive. I'd like to introduce all of my guests today: Alton Glass, Caran, Hartsfield, and Lauren Ruffin. These are amazing people in the space doing amazing work in the film, immersive media, and storytelling spaces. I'm Abran Maldonado with the New York City Media Lab. I am the Associate Director of 5G at Tech. In addition to supporting the Media Lab with rolling out new innovative 5G, AR, and VR technologies to schools, very active in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And I primarily work in bringing technologies to underserved communities, and would love to hear from these three to figure out how I can bring more of immersive media tools into the hands of those that really are creative but just don't have the access. So I'm here to learn myself. So we'd love to get started by just going around, allowing you to introduce yourself, and then I'll pick it up after that with how you got started in the space. Alton, I'll take it to you, and we'll go around clockwise.
Oh, okay. So my background is, hello everybody. Thanks for taking the time to connect with us. My background is film and television, and I was directing films and feature films for television and independent films as well. And about maybe 6 years ago, fell in love with virtual reality. Had opportunity to go to an expo, and what really sparked me was, there wasn't a lot of representation in the space, and I was really curious about what was going to continue to grow from it. And so over the next couple of years after that, I kept it close to the cuff and had opportunity to connect with a company called Radiant Images in Los Angeles, who I just became like a lab rat with all of the technology. And from there, I just made it a dedication to continue to bring other people into the space. So made the investment from my film and production company, transferred over to an immersive lab, which is called GRX Immersive Labs. So now we're an XR content and talent development studio, focusing on fostering entrepreneurship and trying to help individuals to learn about building the immersive economy to become investable versus just employable in this space. So from there, I just started, taking my knowledge base in film and storytelling and moving that into how can I tell stories and take people inside from just a 2D frame and, and bring you inside of a world that immerses you. So it's challenging, but I love growing and learning in this space. It's like a constant growing opportunity. So that's how I got into it. Just fell down the rabbit hole.
Thank you, Alton. Appreciate you. Caran?
Yeah, my name's Caran Hartsfield. I'm a writer and director. I'm also an educator. I teach at NYU film and television. I began in this space originally in theater. I loved being a part of the process, but I quickly realized that I didn't want to be an actress, that I was too much of an introvert to be an actress. But how could I still be a part of the storytelling process? And around that time is when Spike Lee had come out, and I realized that my love of film, I grew up in a family where film was a large part of our communal storytelling, love, and exchange, where we would just talk about films constantly. And so the light bulb went off, and I switched when I was in undergrad at Hampton University, and decided to become a film major. At the time, they didn't really have a film major, so I was sort of trying to cobble one together myself and create a track for myself to find a path. And then I went to NYU for grad school, and that was sort of the beginning of my path.
Awesome. Great. Lauren?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled into XR. My background's actually in lobbying and advocacy work. I did that in DC for a number of years and then hopped over to fundraising, doing large capital projects with buildings and public-private partnerships. I joined a company called Fractured Atlas in 2016, which was my first job in the art sector. I didn't know it existed before 2016, really. And we sponsor a number of film projects. We're the largest fiscal sponsor in the country. And as part of that, I started going to film festivals for the first time, and I was seeing these amazing Black and brown creators making work, but not getting funded to do it. And I sort of started making phone calls, being like, is anybody going to fix this inequity in this industry that doesn't really exist yet? And Alton was one of the first people I called. And he was warm and welcoming and was like, yeah, you're right. That is a problem. What are you going to do about it, essentially? And I was like, shit, I have to do something about it. So that's how Crux started. Crux is a cooperative of Black artists who are working in VR and AR. We're a national network, and we do everything from sort of education, helping people get into the digital space, all the way through to impact production, where we're partnering with creatives like Alton to make sure that their really impactful work gets out into the world. So that's sort of my quick XR story.
Awesome, thank you. Well, there's been an interesting platform recently called Clubhouse that I've been able to sit down with aspiring filmmakers and aspiring people of color that have been trying to break into XR, mixed forms of AR, VR in that space. And, I would love to get your thoughts as to, do you need to be truly credentialed to get into these spaces, or can you be self-taught? What was your entry point in, and do you see some barriers to get into these spaces now for everyone, but primarily people of color? And feel free, anyone can jump in and take it.
I can say initially when I first started out, it was a very high barrier to entry, which is what one of my main reasons of pursuing it, to try to help lower that. And technology has gotten a lot better now and a lot more cost effective. VR, systems where, with a computer and everything was a couple of thousand. Now you can get a mobile headset unit, really high quality for, $200-300. So it's definitely, and, even cameras to prototype, and not even make them where you can put them on top of your phone for like $100. I went on like OfferUp and Let Go, and I scoured for like used equipment, and that's how I kind of hacked together my first sort of prototypes projects. So I think it's definitely become a lot accessible and easier to at least get started.
Awesome. I would say for me, it was a lot of people that were asking me like how to break into certain spaces. And, I feel like with technology, we're building out apps in a lot of spaces. Nowadays, with a lot of no-code platforms, it's also lowering the barrier for a lot of folks that are non-technical, that might have a vision for an app or for a startup, but had the barrier, I don't know JavaScript, I don't know front end, I don't know back end or full stack. But a lot of these no-code platforms are really lowering that barrier and letting people just take the vision that they have in their head and put it on a prototype. So there's a lot of tools nowadays that are opening up at multiple levels, both with actual technologies like that. Great, thank you. So all of you are accomplished, and you could have really just stayed in a cushy role, in a cushy job for maybe a development agency or a studio with your 9-to-5 and collecting your checks. But at what point did you feel like you had that leverage or the call to start telling your own stories and maybe do more mission-driven work with your medium rather than just stay collecting a check for another company?
That's a good one.
Yeah, for me, it was, I'm based in New York. There was a case here, Sean Bell, where a young man who was engaged to be married, and he was at his bachelor party, and he was killed the night of his bachelor party. And like so many, I was just so incredibly brokenhearted and moved by that. And I knew I wanted to make a piece about it, but I hadn't quite figured out how to do it. And then several months later, Oscar Grant died in California, and I realized, this is a thing. Like, this is going to keep happening. These names are going to keep popping up, and it felt like I had not responsibility, but I felt an urge, like a fire. I got to do what I can, maybe even if it's a little drop, to sort of to bring the conversation a little bit more to the forefront. So I called up some friends and said, I'm not sure what I want to do, but let's talk it out. And I was very fortunate that Bradford Young, and this predates all his big stuff now, where he was still coming up and figuring out his own path. So we just sort of figured it out together, and then he pulled in Arthur Jaffa, and we all huddled together and figured out created this piece that was originally called Even So, but then we changed the title to Wait For It, because again, we knew that it was going to keep happening. And that was sort of the kickoff for my own work, but also it was really a kickoff for me to think about how to draw in my collective and really activate my collective when I have an impulse that somebody else is also probably having that impulse, and we were in conversations around that, like, yeah, I've been thinking that too. And we fall into the pattern of thinking it in our little silo and not really being in motion and in action. And so it was a good lesson for me about how I have so many people in my network that were able to do things. It's about being in action. So.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I'm on the opposite side. I'm not really a creative. I feel like I'm just more of a resource. But, you know, the impetus for me was, you know, around the time that Karen's talking about Oscar So White was happening. And we had very, very large XR companies like Jaunt Within raising hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm looking at a film industry reckoning with, you know, 120 years of not paying attention to Black and brown people, and a VR industry that's being invested in essentially the same way. And I've always been really interested in watching how capital flows through systems. And I really wanted to interrupt that. Like, I wanted to see what would it look like if Black people, if brown people could get in early to an industry and begin to carve out our own niche. Would we actually be able to change the way the waterway worked? You know, in some ways, so that resource could continue to flow through to us for a long term. And I couldn't stop thinking about that. Like, it just stayed in my head. And then I did what Karen's, you know, sort of did, which was talk to other people. You know, are you thinking about this? Are you watching this happening? And people were, and, you know, just sort of out of that spun this idea for, you know, what if we had a company, an organization where we could go early and just learn together collaboratively and generatively.
Yeah, for me, I just, as a storyteller, I wanted to create experiences that were uncomfortable, because you know, being able to create experiences that are uncomfortable creates discourse and conversation. And, you know, not being an expert in, you know, whether it be activism or anything like that, I know that education and awareness oftentimes leads and open up those doors. So, you know, for me, I spent a good amount of time, you know, working, you say, in film, and that was very comfortable. And I'm like, well, what else is there that I can do as a storyteller now that I'm starting to see all these other things that are happening out there? And I felt like, you know, Immersive was a great space to move into, and it was going to be challenging, but it was worth it because of the opportunity that Lauren mentioned of opening doors for other creators to be able to use this in a way that we hadn't even thought of yet. So there was just a great opportunity for innovation as well as impact together.
But does that get coupled with like leverage? Did you feel like you needed leverage to make those kind of bold moves, or did you just jump in it without really even thinking about it from that perspective? Because I know for myself, like, I'm wearing a fitted to work now. I felt like it had to get to a certain point where I had the leverage to do that, where in the early stages of my career, I couldn't do that. You know what I mean? Now I feel like I do have that, and I'm at that point in my career.
I think it took a minute for me to get the type of leverage. In the beginning, I had transitioned out of, you know, I was in the Directors Guild. So, you know, I went from having residuals to not having residuals because I'm moving into a brand new space. So that was very uncomfortable for me. But then I had to, you know, talk to my wife about, you know, pulling money from my savings to make a VR short film. And she's like, well, what? No one knows what VR is right now. Like, you can't like immediately make money off of VR. So for me, it was an educational opportunity. And it was like, well, if I can do this and I can show other people that this is something here, then we can start to build something, you know. And I started doing research on, like, even when the Lemire brothers made, was it the first film camera? A projector, no one knew that they gave up that business, and then the industry came, right? So, you know, there has to be someone that sort of starts the train. Someone has to build the tracks before you build the railroad. You know what I mean? And I knew that, hey, I'm going to try it, and if nothing else happens, hopefully I can go back to what I was doing. You know what I mean? But I felt it was worth it because there's somebody out there with an untamed eye that's going to take what we've given them and turn it into something completely different, refreshing, and new.
Yeah, for me, it was a frustration being a founder of color, trying to run a startup, raising rounds, and being asked these questions that show that they just didn't get it. And I was the only one of color in these meetings. And one question that, you know, stuck out for me that is a, you know, a claw on a lot of people's side is that they ask, where's your friends and family round, right? So if you know anything about investment, before you raise a seed round, they expect you to have a friends and family round, which is an official round of like your family and your uncles and your dads will give you $150,000 to $200,000 to get your initial project off the ground. And they're like, well, you skipped that part. I'm like, I didn't skip that part. No one got money in that. Like, they're looking for me to make it, right? I can't go to anybody and like, and you don't want me to borrow $100,000 from the block because you don't know what I got to do to pay that back. Mm-hmm. So let's just, you know, skip that part of the conversation and just evaluate the work for what it is, not have me go through traditional protocols that other families of, you know, generational wealth can provide. And then I was like, all right, well, me and my partner, we were eating lunch at Red Rooster in Harlem. And we were like, we know certain cheat codes that our people don't know. And we need to start doing some more work to show them how to get into this pipeline by showing them the unwritten rules and how we got in. And kind of scaling that and you know, giving that back. But I appreciate all your thoughts on that. That was, you know, super important. So, but perfect segue. So with the, you know, you've all been committed to this work before Black Lives Matter was a thing, before George Floyd. But how has these recent events and recent movements impacted your work? Do you see more people being responsive to your work? More funding opportunities, more audiences being more receptive? I know in my own work where we've tried to do stuff with corporate partners to do social impact events, they're like, yeah, maybe, or, you know, we'll give you some in-kind support, some volunteers. Now they're all ready to cut a check. Now they're like, oh, we want to look like we're a part of something. Can you produce something for us? So certain conversations are also shifting. I was helping a company get a D&I department up and running. And they're like, oh, maybe, you know, automatically they hired a chief diversity officer, right? So what are the things that you're seeing in your own work that are shifting now because of this moment?
You want to go, Alton, or you want me to
go? You can kick it off.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting because, you know, we spent 3 years talking about the importance of, you know, bringing a responsible ethical tech framework to building virtual spaces. And nobody really cared because, you know, most of the folks I was talking to never thought they'd put on a headset. And most certainly didn't think they'd be interacting like we're interacting right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Crux has grown tremendously in the last year. I think inherent in your question was whether or not I think it's a bubble, whether this is like a long-term meaningful commitment.
It was going to be the follow-up.
Yeah. You know, like, I think it probably is a bubble. To a certain extent. I think there are some companies who are going to do the hard work of examining, you know, how their resources flow, how uncomfortable they want to be with their history of oppression in the workplace and in their spending, and others aren't. I mean, others are just going to write a check and, you know, I will take their money 100%.
You can still take advantage even if it is a bubble.
I'm not gonna, I won't shit you on that, but I don't think that whether we're cool to someone else, like I don't think we have, like our value has to be legible to other people for us to be valuable. And I think that inherently Black and brown stories are valuable, and that, you know, the movement has always been here. We're seeing more and more stories. You know, I'm talking to more and more creators who are using technology to document Black history that's been lost. That's been not lost, purposely erased. And that's not going to stop. So, you know, I actually think that the way that it's developing sort of, you know, with some support from corporations, but still on its own in kind of an indie way is really important.
Great answer. Thank you. Anybody else?
I think she summed it up really well. I think because of the timing of COVID and Black Lives Matter, I think it sort of compressed and it brought a lot of the issues to everybody's doorstep. And then being home, it allowed you had to actually address it and see it because we didn't have the opportunity to be out and be busy like we normally are in the day-to-day. So now, you know, the companies that are actively, you know, intentionally want to recognize it because it's in their face are going to, you know, build out and grow from it and reap the benefits of that type of diversity and innovation. And then some, like you said, are just going to, you know, want to, you know, look like they're diverse and cut the check, and that will help some people too. So, it's the long haul that's going to really count at the end of the day.
Caran, specifically for you, you deal with two dynamics, right? So you have projects that you're involved in, and then your students are looking to you for advice on how to break into the industry. Is there specific advice that you give to your students of color who are trying to break into the film industry with maybe these stories that they want to keep true to the culture, and how do you advise them on that strategy and that approach?
Yeah, so that's a big question. I honestly could talk for far too long about it. If I could just try to boil it down to some simple thoughts, I think one, it's about, in terms of from a creative perspective, how do you talk about things that are meaningful to you and themes in a way that don't feel didactic, or you're standing on a soapbox and sort of wagging your fingers at people. And part of that comes from just craft, understanding your craft and being able to do things with elegance and not just like with a blunt hammer, right? And then part of that is also, I think it's our job to figure out of how to do things in new and creative ways, so it's not something familiar. I been there, done that already. And I think for me, that's why I find this forum so exciting, because I'm one of those filmmakers that was very reticent to dip my foot into technology. I'm a little bit of more than a little bit. I'm a Luddite for sure. And I'm slowly building up my courage to really engage in what is possible now, which I think is so exciting right now. Right now I'm developing a class called Modern Social Impact Filmmaking. And we're really trying to lean into technology and how to think about what we do and using what's available to us. So, again, back when we did our project in 2009, there wasn't the social media that we have today. There wasn't TikTok. There wasn't the video effects that are possible now. And so the possibilities are so incredible. And I think for my students, I think part of what I'm hoping to do is to get them to, for many of them, get over the fear and really embrace what is creatively possible. So I think that's step one on how can we really take advantage of the time that we live in.
So Alton, Lauren, what is possible now with immersive media that maybe wasn't possible before?
Ooh,
That's a good question.
Yeah,
it was gonna be easy.
I think that's the beauty in immersive, right? You understand immediately that the imagination is frameless, right? You can think outside the box now with immersive, right? And it trains your eye and your senses in a totally different way, because now you have to think about so many different other things. Sound as a choreography tool, so I'm starting to see creators that are doing some amazing stuff in 360 video. And then I'm starting to see someone learning and taking their knowledge a step further into game engines, Unity and Unreal. So I think it's and then you're starting to see location-based experiences as well. So you're able to mix storytelling in a number of different areas to where you can't quite put it in a medium. So I'm really curious to see how people are taking their own unique sensibilities and their perspective. And I'm seeing these really unique experiences pop up. And then you mentioned AI. That's a whole nother level of integration into storytelling. So you're starting to see technologists come together with traditional storytellers, and now they're creating these sort of hybrid experiences that are taking storytelling to a whole nother place, So I think it's infinite. And that's why it's really great to see two types of developers, like Caran mentioned, you're a developer in a sense as a filmmaker and a production or producer, but then you're a developer with technology. So bringing those two together, I'm starting to see some amazing things, and it's just infinite opportunity, infinite of what can happen right now.
Absolutely. Well, before we get to audience questions, we'd love to have you speak on what are you currently working on. I know you had something to share today, Alton, as well. So I want to give you a chance to share that, and also give everyone a chance to let us know what you're currently working on and where we can find it, because we are your devout and loyal fans from here on out, and we want to know where to find your stuff and spread the word.
Oh, who you want to start?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, you got it. You're in the big box.
Oh, okay, the big box. Okay. All right.
You're in
So
the big box.
we just wrapped a project that's on Oculus right now, Oculus TV, called In Protest. That's about the movement, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement, but it's about the unsung heroes and how people are actually moving things on the front lines through grassroots movement. So you'll see a number of different individuals who are using their talents and their skills and relationships to continue to, you know, create impact. So you can check that out. It's a 4-part series that captured Minnesota, Atlanta, LA, and DC. And then we're working on a project with Crux called Pov Points of View that was funded in partnership with Black Public Media, MacArthur Foundation, Google VR Lab, and Certina, and recently Mozilla. That's about artificial intelligent drones in law enforcement. So in the future, it's about a young man who gets out on parole, and instead of them giving him an ankle bracelet, he's assigned to an AI drone. So this is about, you know, implicit bias and how that can move into technology. So I'll play a quick trailer on that, so you can try to see a little teaser of that real quick. Oh, I gotta actually shut my. That's the other thing. You get so heavy in the tech, you forget how to use the basic stuff online. Hold on a second. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Not
sir.
yet. Yes.
Yes, sir.
A bill was passed recently. It was designed to reduce mass incarceration and high incidence of police brutality. Are you familiar with drone technology and artificial intelligence?
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome to opt out. Serve the remainder of your sentence.
Be mindful of what you do and what you say, because they are learning by watching and observing us. Everything we do is a reflection of how this technology will be. So if you want these robots to have your back, then you better start teaching them how.
Sure. When we're out in the field, when we encounter suspects, I'm immediately viewed as an enemy, when all I'm trying to do is my job.
They will be monitoring and processing all.
You will only be placed on level.
Stop following me everywhere I am.
It's really an extension of us. It's our reflection.
That was great. I'm excited.
There you go. So that's going to be showcasing in pilot form at Mozilla Fest, MozFest, over the next couple of weeks in like an online platform called Hubs, where you can kind of go around the POV drone surveillance headquarters and learn about, you know, this technology and the project if you get a chance to check out MozFest.
Thank you. Lauren, Caran?
Yeah, so next for me, or just a little bit of context, there was a project that we did. I worked with an organization called For Freedoms and the Wide Awakes. We had an event in Washington Square Park on the 4th of July. And my piece was a short video installation, an excerpt of a larger piece. And at the time, the film was projected on the arches of Washington Square Park.
Wow.
But we were unable, the original idea was to create a floating canopy. So imagine, multiple large weather balloons and floating a screen, and so the audience would walk under the floating canopy and view the piece that way. And we, for reasons I won't bore you with, we were unable to do that. So we're going to do that in the week of George Floyd's, the anniversary of his death in May. And we're creating a larger piece, even more than that. And what I'm interested in is an immersive experience for an audience to sort of walk through a space. I won't say where it looks like it might be, but imagine a park. And there are artists in all forms, dancers and singers, and any kinds of arts that you can think of. And that we just take a few hours to create a memorial that honors not only the life and what happened to them, but how can we really honor them moving forward, right? How can we ask and demand for justice? And how can we use the arts to do that? And that's sort of where my passion is right now. I'm fortunate enough to work in Tish, which is a building that has artists, different kinds of artists on every single floor.
At your disposal, everywhere, for sure.
So how can we channel their power to really get conversations moving in a new direction? I think the first level of the conversation has started, but how can we go next level? And the last thing I'll say is that one of the things that was really beautiful about the Black Lives Matter movement was all the different voices that came to the table. And I think as a country, we're starting to see the power of allyship and how we can channel our values as a country into action. And the beauty of fighting for a group that is not ourselves, right? And so when I think about what happened at the airport, when there was a Muslim ban, of the incredible amount of people that went out to that. And, you know, the list goes on. And again, how can we continue to claim our power?
Absolutely. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what your students bang out, and we'd love to learn more. That project, if you have any links to share or where we can follow the path of that project in May, you can share it in the reaction or on the question board on the side. Lauren, what's going on with Crux?
Man. So we've got a couple of projects in addition to the work that we're doing with Alton and POV. We're working with alumni of the Black Panther Party to do a large-scale location-based exhibit that allow, and in partnership with Microsoft, to do essentially conversational long-form interviews with them and with AI. So that should be, pretty cool, coming out next year. And, to your point, Abe, earlier, we've been fortunate enough to not have to really raise money. We had two funders of color come in and invest in us, sort of be our friends and family around in a way, but we're at the point where we have to fundraise. So I'm hitting the fundraising pavement pretty hard right now to support the projects and to make sure that there's continued support for Black creators in this space.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to stay in touch with all of you offline. Maybe we could do a follow-up conversation about the AI stuff that we're doing with filmmakers and bring you into speed and see what you can do with that and as a utility as well to add that to the mix. But a lot of interesting stuff at the combination of all three of those with AR, VR, and AI. And thank you. Just thank you. This was a powerful conversation. It was needed. I needed this. And I'm glad to hear about your work. I think we're all hopeful for what's to come for, the students that Caran's working with and the stuff that you're enabled to do with your expertise. And, I appreciate everyone checking in for this. Please follow all these amazing individuals and enjoy the rest of the conference. Enjoy the rest of the event. I think, Steve, you'll let us know where to go from here. Thank you, Alton. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Caran. Everyone's giving you your flowers. If I could find the flower emoji, I'd give you flowers.
I'll take mine now.
Yeah.